Hello, this is Willie from the Ozarks, and it is April the 15th, and we're ready for Lesson 105 in a workbook for students in A Course in Miracles. God's peace and joy are mine. God's peace and joy are mine. Let's take a moment and before we read into our new lesson for the day, let's think about yesterday's lesson. I seek but what belongs to me in truth. I seek but what belongs to me in truth. When we start that lesson, we were to say, I seek but what belongs to me in truth, and joy and peace are my inheritance. So we're already preparing the way for tomorrow's lesson. But what we want to recognize is that I seek but what belongs to me in truth. There is a reason why we're not experiencing God's peace and joy. And it's because we have filled our minds with illusions based out of lack. You know, we don't think we're going to have enough, and we believe we're separate from our source. And so we've made all kinds of beliefs and ideas and that are not even necessary if we recognize that God's peace and joy are mine. You know, so we have to clear the mind, clear a place ready to receive God's gifts. And keep in mind that God's gifts are timeless. They were given to you before time was even conceptualized or made. You know, we ended up making time because we needed it to learn lessons. When we've learned all the lessons that we can learn in time, it'll be no more. But what will not cease will God's gifts of joy and peace. They're outside of time. So which means that being that they're always exist, they're always here. They move through. They're not affected by time. So you can always have God's peace and joy. You don't have to wait on time to have joy and peace. Don't let your mind think that it has to wait to have joy and peace, because it's your inheritance. It's your native state. It's who you are. All right. So, and we were to tell ourselves often, I seek but what belongs to me in truth. God's gifts of joy and peace are all I want. God's gifts of joy and peace are all I want. You know, we were in our meditation, we were to ask to recognize what God's gifts. Let's see what it say. Lay aside the conflicts of the world that offer gifts and other goals made of illusions. You know, lay those aside. Becoming aware of what thoughts you have that are taking the space where joy and peace should be is valuable. But letting it go is the next obvious step. All right. Before we read God's peace and joy are mine. Well, let me ask you one more thing. Did you get some kind of a sense of, like in verse 7, we clear a holy place within our minds before His altar, where His gifts of peace and joy are welcome, and to which we come to find what has been given us by Him. So did you find some of that peace and joy? Did you find some thoughts that were cluttering up the mind, some fears that you were believing, some things you thought had to happen in order for you to be able to experience joy, which isn't necessary? You can experience joy right now. Okay, God's peace and joy are mine. All right, let's see. Let's look just for a moment at in the Bible where we're going to look at Hebrews 11 and verse 7. By faith, Noah, being warned by God concerning events as yet unseen, in reverent fear constructed an ark for the saving of his household. By this he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. So, a couple of things I wanted to mention on that. One is that Noah was told to build this ark and to bring these animals on it, but there had never been a flood that had been on the whole world. And whether that was symbolic or literal isn't the point. The point is that he was told to do something that had never been done before, and he did it because of his reverence. So this is the way we want to do it. I think about the time that it says the children of Israel were walking across the Jordan back, and they were to take possession of the land of Israel. And when they crossed the Jordan River, it says that when they were supposed to just walk, they came at the flood stage, and the waters was flooding across there. But it says that when they put their feet, when the priests who were leading the whole procession put their feet in the water or on the water, it parted, just like the Red Sea parted to let them in 40 years earlier. After they'd been wandering around for 40 years in the wilderness, then they crossed over. The same thing happened. But it says they had to take off walking, and they were going to walk right over it. He said, just walk through the water. And they're looking at it thinking, whoa, I don't know if we can make it. But they did it. And the waters parted is what the story tells us. Anyway, the principle there is that we with faith, we know what God wants us to do, and we do it even if appearances tell us otherwise. So that's one thing I want to say. And another thing is I can see why a lot of people get confused with the Bible. Because some of these old translations, and this is the King James I'm reading, I imagine there's some other translations that don't use the word fear. But, you know, it says here that God commended him. See, where does it say it? Anyway, where did we just? Oh, right here. In reverent fear, Noah constructed that ark. In reverent fear. To me, those don't go together. Reverence and fear don't go together. It probably, if you could go back and look at the true word, now it could have been just that that's where they were at and believed that they needed to fear God, which is what Jesus is trying to get us to recognize, that God's our loving Father and no need to fear him or anything. Fear is something we want to move beyond. But probably what the word originally meant there, my guess, is that it meant a reverent respect, you know, rather than being afraid of God. He's trying to get us to get beyond that. No fear of God. So, okay, before we read our lesson, look what I've got here. I've got some really nice looking Brussels sprouts. I'm going to put those out. I could have put them out a long time ago, but I didn't really have my ground worked where I'm working my garden. So I'm putting them out, and I'll get a little harvest. They don't do real good in the hot weather, but they do nice, and they actually taste better after you've had a few frosts. So that a lot of people plant them in the late summer and you can harvest them. Someplace you can harvest them all winter long, but frost won't hurt them too bad until it gets really, really cold. Probably about 10 degrees would be my guess. I didn't check it out. All right, lesson 105, God's peace and joy are mine. Yesterday, I sang you that little song, Love, Love, God is love. Love, love, God is love. The good news in one word is love. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love, love, love. Anyway, I sang that because Jean's daughter thought that would be a good song to recognize him by. And I thought, I can see that. He's the epitome of a man who walked this world in a loving, gentle way. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out, that I didn't really say that yesterday, and I meant to. So I say it today. These are a progression of classes. You got to listen to all of them in order to get everything. If you just go to lesson 105, you might get what I say for that day, but you won't get what I said yesterday, and they kind of build on. So it's a journey we're undertaking this year together. And if you just chimed in and you want to just go ahead and go through the lessons with me, just know that there's a foundation of 104 lessons that we're building on, okay? So be aware. God's peace and joy are mine. God's peace and joy are yours. Today we will accept them knowing they belong to us, and we will try to understand these gifts increase as we receive them. They are not like to the gifts the world can give, in which the giver loses as he gives the gift. The taker is the richer by his loss. These are not gifts, but bargains made with guilt. The whole monetary system is really based on guilt. You don't give me my fair exchange. If I give you a product, I expect you to give me something in return, money. And if you don't, you're guilty. All right? Well, this isn't really the way the kingdom of heaven works, but it's the way that we work in this world, isn't it? And I think there's some ways to start looking at this that takes some of the harshness out of even that. Jesus told us years ago, 2,000 years ago, he said, give without expecting anything in return. So, you can, and when someone asks to borrow something, loan it to them. And if they give it back, great. If they don't, then don't require it back. This keeps you free. Paragraph 2, the truly given gift entails no loss. The truly given gift entails no loss. It is impossible that one can gain because another loses. It is impossible that one can gain because another loses. Wow. This implies a limit and an insufficiency. No gift is given thus. Such gifts are but a bid for a more valuable return, a loan with interest to be paid in full, a temporary lending, meant to be a pledge of debt to be repaid with more than was received by him who took the gift. Paragraph 3. There's a lot there, and I think we just need to run on through it. You might go back and read this a little bit more. This strange distortion of what giving means pervades all levels of the world you see. It strips all meaning from the gifts you give and leaves you nothing in the ones you take. A major learning goal this course has set is to reverse your view of giving so you can receive. Okay, we're going to reverse our view of giving so that we can receive. For giving has become a source of fear. And so you would avoid the only means by which you can receive. Okay, so giving has become a source of fear because you feel like you're going to lose it. Because in the physical world, it does appear like if you give it to somebody, you don't have it, and they do. So they've been enriched, and you've lost something. And so you would avoid the only means by which you can receive. But really, Jesus is saying the only way you can even receive anything is by giving it away. All right? Keep in mind that we're working with thought. And from that level, when you give something away, you still get to keep it because you get to keep the thought. And if you'll use that, matter of fact, he's going to use that to teach us in other places in the course, that you still get to keep it when you give away a thought. So to look at everything that you give away as at its source or at its fundamental beingness, it's a thought, and you get to keep it. Okay. Paragraph 4, accept God's peace and joy, and you will learn a different way of looking at a gift. God's gifts will never lessen when they are given away. They but increase thereby. God's gifts increase by giving them away. As heaven's peace and joy intensify when you accept them as God's gift to you, so does the joy of your Creator grow when you accept His joy and peace as yours. What? As heaven's peace and joy intensifies when you accept them as God's gift to you, so does the joy of your Creator grow when you accept His joy and peace as yours. Wow, that's neat. Paragraph 5, true giving is creation. True giving is creation. It extends the limitless to the unlimited, eternity to timelessness, and love unto itself. It adds to all that is complete already, not in simple terms of adding more, for that implies that it was less before. It adds by letting what cannot contain itself fulfill its aim of giving everything it has away, securing it forever for itself. So in God's economy, we give away if we want to make sure we get to keep it and we get to recognize that it's ours. We have to give. Give all to all. Paragraph 6. Today accept God's peace and joy as yours. Let Him complete Himself as He defines completion. You will understand that what completes Him must complete His Son as well. He cannot give through loss. No more can you. Receive His gift of joy and peace today, and He will thank you for your gift to Him. Your gift of receiving His gift. He's going to thank you for it. Paragraph 7. Today our practice periods will start a little differently. Begin today by thinking of those brothers who have been denied by you the peace and joy that are their right under the equal laws of God. Okay, so what you've been given needs to be shared. The equal laws of God, what God gives you, He gives to everyone. So you be sure to be a good conduit to give to everyone. If you catch yourself withholding a happy cheer, a smile, there's one to work on. You might find somebody that kind of ruffles your feathers the wrong way, and you don't tend to gravitate towards them and bless them. Give them a smile. And those are the people we want to bring to mind. Here you denied them to yourself, and here you must return to claim them as your own. Think of your enemies a little while. That enemies is in quotes because we don't really have any enemies, but you might think you do. You people you just tend to shy away from or you actively dislike. Tell each one as he occurs to you, my brother, peace and joy I offer you, that I may have God's peace and joy as mine. Okay, after we've thought of that person that we tend to avoid or dislike, which we should have already got beyond that, but he's realizing that even though the roots have been pulled out a lot, there's still a lot of roots that need to be cleaned up. We got a lot of little fires still burning. The big fire's out, but now we got to put out all the little ones, okay? So here we're going to do it. We're going to think of our brothers and our sisters that we're going to offer them peace and joy. And we do it. And we're going to say, my brother, peace and joy I offer you, that I may have God's peace and joy as mine. 9. Thus you prepare yourself to recognize God's gifts to you, and let your mind be free of all that would prevent success today. See, we're going to remove all that is keeping us from experiencing success. We're going to look for people that we're withholding our smile, our love, our happiness, our blessing. Now are you ready to accept the gift of peace and joy which God has given you? Now are you ready to experience the joy and peace you have denied yourself? Now you can say, God's peace and joy are mine. for you have given what you would receive. I love that. I love that. You've got to give. If you want God's peace and joy, you got to be sure to be given it, okay? And that's how you're going to get it, by giving it. I remember Yogananda was one time asked, I forget exactly the way the story goes, but the essence of it was that if there's something that you want in your life, make sure that you give that away, because that's how you get it into your life, by giving it away. Totally opposite of the world's economy, all right? But remember, we're miracle workers. We're learning that there's a more powerful method that we can live by than that old concept that was born out of fear and separation. Paragraph 10. You must succeed today if you prepare your mind as we suggest, for you have let all bars to peace and joy be lifted up, and what is yours can come to you at last. So tell yourself, God's peace and joy are mine, and close your eyes a while and let his voice assure you that the words you speak are true. 11. Spend your 5 minutes thus with him each time you can today, but do not think that less is worthless when you cannot give him more. At least do not think that less is worthless when you cannot give him more. At least remember hourly to say the words which I call on him. At least remember hourly to say the words which call on him to give you what he wills to give and wills you to receive. So even if you can't take every first 5 minutes of the hour to do your meditation, at least remember to say, what was say, my brother, peace and joy. I said, what was it? Oh, God's peace and joy are mine. At least say that. And you might even say, my brother, peace and joy I offer you, that I may have God's peace and joy is mine. And then let's see. Did we finish the 11th paragraph? At least remember hourly to say the words which call on him to give you what he wills to give and wills you to receive. And the last paragraph, determine not to interfere today with what he wills. Determine not to interfere. Don't throw up a grievance. Don't cherish a grievance. Don't withhold a blessing. If you feel a momentary that you feel like you need to offer a blessing, and then it gets covered by a grievance, well, you'll feel the feeling of withholding the blessing, and because you'll feel the locks of peace if you're really watching. And then you can say, my brother, peace and joy I offer you, that I may have God's peace and joy is mine. So that last paragraph again, and I didn't read it all. Determine not to interfere today with what he wills. And if a brother seems to tempt you to deny God's gift to him, see it as but another chance to let yourself receive the gifts of God as yours. So just remember, if some brother tempts you, and really your brother's not tempting you, it's your own perception. You're the one doing this. Doesn't matter what they're doing. But if you seem to think, I don't like that guy, I don't like that person, I don't like what they did, I'm upset, I'm going to, if you feel that loss of joy and that diminishment of happiness, well then quickly use this. Then bless your brother thankfully and say to him, my brother, peace and joy I offer you, that I may have God's peace and joy as mine. So let's be sure to not withhold the blessing that God wants to run through us, because that's how we're going to receive it. My brother, peace and joy I offer you, that I may have God's peace and joy as mine. God's peace and joy are mine.